This is E&P Audio, a service of Editor and Publisher Magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing.
Welcome back for a blue plate, free speech, presidential new episode of E&P Reports, the official podcast from the staff of Editor and Publisher Magazine. I'm your host, Bob Andelman. This week, we bring you another fresh conversation with an industry leader and challenge you once more to look at news publishing with fresh eyes. I also want to make two important points before we get started about this week's show. First, our guest today, Clay Jones, uses some pretty colorful language at times. If you're easily offended, well, honestly, I'm not sure why you're in the news publishing business to begin with, but that's your choice, so feel free to listen to something else. I'm sure Willie Geist has a great conversation with a guest over on the Sunday podcast. It's not our intent to offend, or his. And second, in the interest of full disclosure, I personally published Clay Jones' new book, Tales from the Trumpster Fire, a Cartoon Anthology. It's an unusual conflict of interest, and we wanted to be upfront about it, so there'd be no question later. Now then, Clay Jones is a self-syndicated editorial cartoonist. He talked to me about a biting new collection of his work, Tales from the Trumpster Fire, a Cartoon Anthology. Jones's work is distributed to newspapers and news sites across the United States and around the world. He also draws a weekly cartoon for CNN Opinion's weekly newsletter, Provoke, Persuade. He has been one of America's hottest and fastest-rising political cartoonists of the Trump era. He was also a finalist for the 2019 Herblock Award and rejected a free speech award from the government of Iran. Check out more of Clay Jones's work by reading his personal blog and watching his cartooning videos when this interview is done at www.claytoonz.com. That's ClayToonz as in zebra.com. Earlier this year, I invited political cartoonist Clay Jones to be a guest on my personal podcast, Mr. Media Interviews. His editorial comics were catching fire across social media and in traditional media with his hysterical depictions of Donald Trump in his greatest reality TV role yet, President of the United States of America. Jones, a former Republican himself, was pounding the current occupant of the White House with incisive humor and damning observations. And it was all funny as hell. Several months passed, and Jones received a number of accolades, including finalist for the 2019 Herblock Award. He also rejected a free speech award, and that's free speech in quotes, from the government of Iran. Well, that's when I asked him if he'd like to publish a collection of his funniest Trump cartoons to date in a book from my own side hustle, Mr. Media Books. Jones said yes, and the result is the deluxe full-color Tales from the Trumpster Fire, a cartoon anthology. It's packed with more than 200 cherry bombs of love and adoration that your Republican uncle will be delighted to find under his Christmas tree this Yuletide season. It's available in paperback and as an ebook everywhere you order books. And, like I said, I published it, so you know I'm a big fan. Clay Jones, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. I'm glad that we get the disclaimer out there that you are the publisher, so this will be a one-sided interview, I'm sure. So,
yeah, I wanted to be straightforward about that. So everybody knows. There's no doubt about that. Now, let's get to the meat of this thing. In the recent words of a Sinclair reporter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, why do you hate poor old Donald J. Trump so much? I hear he's a lovely man who adores children and dogs and
where did
always.
You hear that?
Just what I hear from Sinclair people mostly, and that he leaves $100 bills in the church collection box on Sundays.
No, I don't think he goes to church. I know. I like that question though; it's pretty good. I don't hate Donald, and I tell people this all the time. I don't hate Donald Trump, but I hate President Donald Trump. The man should not be president. I don't hate the office. I don't hate him, and I don't hate the office. I hate him being in the office. and it's my job to, along with many others, to help get him out of that office. Hopefully, we do it with an election. I mean, I would like to see him get impeached, but don't have a lot of faith in that. I think he should be impeached, but I think we need to get rid of the guy, vote him out.
So this kind of raises an interesting question, I think, that comes up to editorial cartoonists a lot, and that is, do you feel like when it comes to things that you feel strongly about, that you have a mission to accomplish something, either personally or part of a group? I mean, does an editorial cartoonist have a role to play in terms of making politics change or adjust or evolve?
I think a lot of cartoonists have different views about this. Some cartoonists are activists. I know a cartoonist who stands in front of abortion clinics screaming at pregnant women. I know, there's another conservative cartoonist I can think of who he boasts about his friendships with Republican lawmakers. And on the liberal end, I know some cartoonists who are very much activists. They're part of Occupy Wall Street. They're out campaigning for Bernie Sanders. And I think that as a cartoonist, for instance, you said I used to be Republican. I've never been a member of any party officially. I used to be more conservative. But I think my segue from that is that I don't think that we should, as a political cartoonist, we're also a journalist. We are opinion journalists, but I don't think we should be activists. And while it might be kind of like in Star Wars, how you have the Rebel Alliance and then you have these offshoots with the same cause, but the Rebel Alliance doesn't want anything to do with them. I think causes shouldn't want anything to do with me or other political cartoonists, even though they email me and send me messages every day, different people like crazy, to join and sign and make something go viral. And I'm like, I don't do that because I am not really an activist. When I say, if I ever tell you that I'm part of the resistance, I'm actually my own one-man resistance is the way I feel about it. I don't want to come to your party. And if you want me at your party, that's definitely not a party I want to go to. I'd rather crash to parties that don't want me. So I think your question was about, are we activists? Are we members of other groups? Some are, and I view it that we're not. Some cartoonists say that we're not even journalists. And that doesn't make me mad. That's fine. You go off and you be what you think you should be. But I think we are journalists, and we need the a personal ethics policy where we don't actually get involved. We vote, but from there we don't donate money to political candidates. We don't stand in front of abortion clinics. At least I don't think we should. And we don't join the Sierra Club. I don't wear. I mean, when I went to a Donald Trump rally, I didn't go holding a sign down with Donald Trump, and I didn't go there to even argue with people. I went there to observe and to experience the thing so I could know even more what I'm talking about when I talk about the guy. So, yeah.
Well, I appreciated that you yeah. No, I appreciate that you clarified my memory on your lack of party membership. But I knew that you had told me before that you were more conservative. And and I know one of the things that we're facing with even doing this interview is that there's going to be people who particularly on the right are going to be upset that Clay Jones, who attacks Trump a lot and has this book of cartoons that are
me?
Yeah, you. There you go. The book actually exists. They're going to be upset by it. But you have come a long way in your personal evolution in terms of your politics, right? I mean, there was a time you probably wouldn't have thought that you would be taking this particular side.
I never really thought about too much of the future. Sorry about the background. And I consider myself more conservative many years ago, like during the 90s and such. If I have to, I'll move us to another room. And I was hoping we'd beat that. She was napping. Three. What was the question again?
I don't even remember. No, I mean, your evolution, yeah.
I always considered myself very conservative, and I thought I was. And I think the only thing that I really changed on was who I voted for. And on abortion, I became pro-life over time. And but it was really the Iraq War that made me realize that I was not a conservative at all. I always thought that gay marriage should be illegal, and I thought that was a conservative position. I thought, stay out of it. I was never a religious person, even when I was conservative. And I know Republicans who are not religious at all, more so maybe libertarians. But I just consider myself conservative. And maybe that was part of the tribalism. I thought maybe that was the side I'm on. And now I don't really care about that anymore. And I didn't change overnight. It just wasn't, I didn't go snap. But the one thing that I did snap on was the Iraq War. I was never for it. And as soon as the discussion came up, as soon as someone floated it out, the very first idea about invading Iraq in the early 2000s, I was like, no, that's a bad idea. And I was for going to Afghanistan, but going to Iraq, I thought, why? And at that point on, I was pretty much opposed to the Republican Party. And actually, I think that kind of started before Iraq with the Patriot Act. I wasn't a fan of that. And I was kind of afraid of Homeland Security when they're creating that department. And I don't know where we'll stand on that really today with that whole department's creation. It's a monster that's already here. It's going to stay here. But that pretty much had me going when I saw people were giving Bush a blank check. To me, that wasn't about being a conservative or a liberal. That was like, hey, we need to ask questions. And at that time, after 9/11, if you ask questions where what you don't support the troops, what you support the terrorists, you don't love America. If you didn't have a bumper sticker in your car with American flag on it, you were helping the terrorists or something like that. Especially when we started ramping up for the war with Iraq, and that's what changed me overnight. Was well, not overnight, but immediately. I've always been for asking questions, and clarity with our government, and with the Iraq War, there was none of that. Reporters were even afraid to ask questions. They supposed to aren't supposed to. So,
do you feel that the Republican Party, has changed in 3 years dramatically from what it was, or is it now just more? Does Trump represent more closely what it's always been about?
I think in a lot of ways it has changed and it hasn't. It's changed in that they're more honest about it. The thing is, when they used to talk about lower deficits, they were always lying. We knew that. And they always claimed they were the great ones with foreign policy. They weren't. They were lying about that. But then as it turns out, when they talk about having morals, they were totally lying. They were faking it for all those decades. They've never been about that because they've shown with Donald Trump, they'll sell out all their principles to get a judge they want, to get their tax cuts. So now, yes, they have changed in that they're more of a cult, but they haven't changed because they never really had those convictions. Those convictions about we're going to be America first, we're going to be patriots. Guess what? If you are a Republican and you support Donald Trump, you're not a patriot. You're not being more patriotic than anyone else. In fact, if anything, you're more of a sellout. And I don't mind saying that right into your camera and I like pissing off Republicans when I say it, or Trump supporters, because it needs to be said to them to their face. They all need an Emmanuel Macron to sit next to them and call out their bullshit when they're saying it. And Donald Trump doesn't have enough of that, and either do they, And plus, this is better than going to a bar and screaming at them.
And do you feel has the existence of Donald Trump in the White House, has it freed you up to be more direct about what you think, or have you always been this way?
Well, I think it gave me something to be more direct about, but I've always wanted to be this way. When I worked for a newspaper, I wasn't allowed to be this way, especially during the whole Iraq thing. I almost got fired by that newspaper, and 9/11 probably saved my job because I was feuding with the newspaper, and I was actually on probation when the planes flew into World Trade Center, which is a fun story for another time maybe. But 9/11 saved my job, and I still had to fight for things. And then after 9/11, it wasn't just me. Every cartoonist in the country was pretty much held back, not so much by our editors, but just by what was acceptable. And I talked to Howard Kurtz about it once, and along with several other cartoonists, about how we were being held back because we really couldn't criticize anything. And at the time, we couldn't even be funny. And there were a lot of days like that before 9/11 and way after where it was always like that for me in my job at the Freelance Star. After I was laid off, I took a year off, and when I came back, I thought, but I don't want to just come back and draw obituary cartoons and do the kind of stuff I was doing before. And I did a lot of good stuff for the Freelance Star, but there were a lot of days that I was held back. So whenever I came back, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to let anything hold me back. And if I don't get clients, if I don't pick up papers from it, and papers drop me, and a lot of them drop me, a lot of them send me emails, so we can't carry these from potential clients. I just thought, so be it. I'm going to do what I believe in. I'm going to do what I think is right, and I'm going to have a lot of fun. Because if you're a political cartoonist and you're not having fun, then what's the point of drawing political cartoons? You know, might as well just draw a sinking ship every week. Or the most common cliche are things going off cliffs. If you ever go, you can't go a week without seeing a cartoon without something going off a cliff. Whether it's cars or people, waterfalls count too. There's always something going off a cliff, and it's kind of like one of my missions is not to draw that cartoon ever again. But that freed me up. And then Trump came along, and that gave me a target, a bigger target. And to me, it was a very important target. It's extremely important to oppose Donald Trump. It's very American to oppose Donald Trump. It's un-American to support Donald Trump. And I know conservatives are going to love that. But it's my job, it's my duty as an American to bring this man down and make him look as ridiculous as possible. And hopefully I am succeeding. You can be the judge yourself by going out now and buying a copy of Tales from the Trumpster Fire, published by Media Publishing.
All right, folks, I published the book, but I didn't put him up to the nonstop pitching here in this conversation. Was there a moment in the last, I don't know, I'm thinking the last year and a half, when it just kind of clicked for you that Donald Trump was such a sharply defined target of your antipathy and your rage that there came a point when, for example, when you really focused in on what to do with his hair, and then the tie, because one of your things is that he's got that long red tie almost in every illustration that's just going on and on and on and on, and the hair is going the other direction, kind of the opposite. Was it in drawing him that it coalesced for you, or was it in his politics? When did you become so Trump-centric, do you think?
While he was running, a lot of times publishers and newspaper editors would yell at me and a lot of my colleagues like, hey, there's too much Trump, or you don't want to run Trump today. Because, quite frankly, they were getting death threats. And I think the way it became much more important to me to take him down, and like how the tie and the hair, they all evolved over time. They didn't come up when I first started drawing him. And if you see the book, I'm not going to hold it up again. Tales from the Trumpster Fire. He evolved over time, the caricature, and it became more and more important, like you said, to focus on him. And to me, that happened not when he won the election. That happened whenever all those never-Trumpers became, Trumpers. Like you look at Jason Chaffetz from Utah, when he said, how could I vote for him? That would just disappoint my daughter for me to vote for a man like this man who boasts about, assaulting women, who's been accused of rape. And how could I support this guy? And then the next day he's out there campaigning for him. When you had Paul Ryan saying, well, what he said about the judge, saying that a Mexican judge can't judge me, isn't qualified, is the very definition of a racist comment. And then he's out there campaigning for the guy. So that's when it really became important, because whenever he became acceptable and he was put on this pedestal where he never belonged, and then of course he won the presidency, so now it's really your American duty to take down Donald Trump, to the point that now there were days where I thought, man, I've drawn Donald Trump 6 days in a row, and personally I get tired of drawing the guy after that many times, and I'd still have newspapers scream at me, but now I've given up. I don't care. If I draw Donald Trump every day for the next 2 weeks and I lose a client or two, I don't want to lose the clients, but I am going to do what I think is the most important cartoon to do that day, or at least the best idea I had, the funniest one. But I became centric on Trump whenever, and I do like to do other subjects, man. When they come up, I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm so excited not to do a Trump cartoon, but it's really important to do the Trump cartoons, and it became important to me when Republicans made him their deity. Their deity, their idol, their messiah.
The chosen one, I believe.
Yes, the chosen one, as he puts it. Donald Trump was complaining about toilets yesterday. He's a president complaining about flushing toilets 15 times, and what we need to do is keep flushing until we get rid of him. Is what I think.
Do you now the book? You would think I would know this by heart, but the book is. is chronological or it's not chronological?
It is not. That was my original idea. You didn't see all the early versions whenever I was putting this thing together. And this thing has a lot of hours. I went to dinner last night with my girlfriend Amanda and her brother and a few other people, and I was worried about the price of the book. And she said, "Hey, look how many hours you put in this thing." And the book kept getting thicker and thicker as we're going, and because things kept happening, Trump kept doing things. But I think there's one cartoon in the book that is not a Trump cartoon, but I felt like it was so good I had to stick it in, and that was in the Alabama abortion ban. But I started the book chronological, and I was going to do it by the years. There was going to be, and all the chapters were just like with the years. And then, so it was really like only a four chapter book. And I thought it's really, really stupid. And I canned it all, I trashed it, and I started over with the same cartoons I wanted. And I decided to make it by subject. So I sat down and I wrote down all the subjects, and I thought it worked out better that way. But I wanted to kick the book off with the current caricature of him with some of the current cartoons, so it doesn't start off with the campaign. I made that, I think, the second chapter of the book. Mm-hmm. So I don't want people to open up the book and see my 2015 Trump, because I hate that caricature. So it opens up to my 2019 version of Trump. So yeah, I'm really good at taking questions and answering them for 25 minutes.
Makes my job so much easier.
It started off chronological, and then it's a huge clusterfuck, people. But let me, if you don't mind, this is kind of a plug, but I'm looking away. I'm going to read some of the chapters here, but we have a chapter on the impeachment. And of course, the chapter about him running is a narcissistic, racist idiot runs for president. We have Putin's puppet, liar in chief, fun with corruption, immigration and a racist vanity project, fake news and alternative facts, trust fund babies, friends and sycophants. I think we should call those sycophants, by the way. I should just change the whole pronunciation of that word because they're all psychotic. Fun with racism. We'll have a lot of fun with this book. Narcissist Trump baby. Really a whole chapter about his narcissism. And could have done the whole book on that. Fun with sexism. An international embarrassment. And the very last chapter, my favorite, titled Trump Fuckery. So this is the book, folks.
There you go. Yeah. And the funny thing is, the up until very late in the process, the title of the book was going to be something different.
You know what? I was thinking about that like a week ago, and I couldn't even remember what it was. And I remember that I really went to bat for that title, and I was like, what was that title again that I really fought for and I went to bat for? But the funny thing is, this title came from Matt Davies, political cartoonist with Newsday, and last year's Herblock winner, who's been a friend of mine for about 20 years. And in case you're a Republican, 20 years is 2 decades. But but I was talking to him about it, and he asked to be on the email with the group I put together to help me edit the book. And so I did, and then he liked the title, but he says, but it's not you. You need something crazier that's really yours, that fits the caricature, as you talk about. It's just so crazy and insane and stupid. And then he threw out something like Tales from the Dumpster Fire, and then I thought that would just make such a better cover than him holding the book and saying impeach this book. And I also had a problem with that. That was the original title of the book, listeners, viewers. And the other problem I had with that was that about 3 decades ago, the late, great Doug Marlette, he did a book called Shred This Book. And I thought someone might think I stole that from him, but I really didn't. But anyway, after we came up with a different title and the cover, and I really don't want to do it because the cover is so much better. But when we came up with a different title, I just thought, well, I don't have to worry about that impeach this book thing anymore, that Doug Marlette kind of connection. So,
the irony to me was that So folks, in case you lost it in that soliloquy, it was it's all right. The original title was Impeach This Book, and then we moved away from that, and it became Tales from the Trumpster Fire. Yeah. But the irony to me was that the book, it came out sooner than we thought, and it was available the night before the first House impeachment hearing, and which made me think, geez, did we make a mistake? But I grew to really like the second title, the current title, and who knows, the second title, we may find another use for it one day.
We might, but someone else will probably steal it now. It'll be done. We didn't copyright it. But I like this because I think it will stand the test of time. I think impeached would have done it too. But this mostly just really, I think it fits the cartoons, and it's just of how silly it is. There's a dumpster fire on the cover of the book, and we call it Trumpster Fire, and he's got a golf club and it's on fire too, and even his hair is on fire a little bit. And I just think it kind of fits with the whole thing. I mean, the book has a chapter called Trump Fuckery, so I think it really fits.
Well, so tell me about this, because we're likely to have a very strong journalism and news publishing audience for this particular topic.
And we haven't lost them yet.
Yeah, well, it's possible. Tell me about the reactions you've had during the course of 2019 as your voice, because in my opinion, at least, your editorial voice related to Trump has gotten stronger and more defined and more precise. Everything with you now, I think, is like you're focused like a laser on him, and it's what makes it funnier, and makes it more. It hurts more if you're supporting Trump because it's that much more precise. I'm kind of curious what kind of response you've gotten, not just from readers but from editors and publishers.
Thank you very much, because I worry all the time that I'm like losing it. Is my work good this year? Am I doing okay? Thank you very much. I send out these solicitations to the newspapers to pick up clients, and sometimes I take a little break, and I took a really long break while I was doing this book, so I recently started it up again. And I actually, and these are usually like some small town papers, but occasionally they're from a daily. Most editors don't ever respond if they don't want to carry the cartoons or they don't want to become a subscriber. And those that do respond, it's usually thanks but no thanks, or some of them will write something even nice. Hey, I like your work so much, but we can't. Or I'll even get sometimes, we can't do anything this left, and stuff like that. And I reply to each of them nicely. But once a week or so, I get something from an editor that might actually call me a libtard, or use the term fake news, and I'm thinking. And that really breaks my heart. Not that someone's insulting me, but that a journalist, a newspaper publisher, is co-opting Donald Trump's terms. And he's in the newspaper business, and he's calling it fake news. It seems like if you're in the news business, you should understand there's no such thing as fake news. I mean, would you consider News of the World news? I mean, you can call that fake news because it's pretend news. You can call it that. But to be a newspaper person, a journalist, how can you use the term fake news? How can you co-opt the president's terms? How can you start calling people libtards who disagree with you? And then I even get sometimes I get the how dare you insult President Trump? All you do is bash him. You're one-sided. I'm like, he's pretty much describing what every cartoonist in the world is, but he's attacking me for it. And I get that from them. You're so agenda-driven. Everything you get is just hatred for Donald Trump. And I do get that. You hate Donald Trump. You hate Donald Trunk. I don't care what people think. I hate Donald Trump because I do hate President Donald Trump. But that is the reaction I get from a lot of editors. Then there are all those days where an editor laughs. They send me into like, I just love this cartoon. But I don't get a whole lot of those, even from my liberal editors. Editors, for the most part, I got to say, though, don't really bug me that much. They don't really contact me about the cartoons or anything. I lost a client last week, and on the same day I picked up a new client, and I hated losing the former client, and it was a daily, but that happens. I'm glad that I always come out even Steven. It's like my business isn't growing, but it's not shrinking every time I lose when I pick one up. But I don't really hear from the editors that much. The ones who pay me, who keep carrying my cartoons.
I was surprised a minute ago you actually said the words president and Trump in the same, well, they were right next to each other, and I know that pains you to use that combination of words. Yeah,
I refuse to really call him President Trump. And like in the context, it was like I don't hate Donald Trump, I hate President Trump, and that's about the only way that I'll use it. I refuse to call him president because it's like the impeachment. The impeachment is not a coup. First off, it's in the Constitution, and if that's a coup undermining the will of the American people, the impeachment, then I did this in a cartoon. Then doesn't the Electoral College do that? Isn't that undermining the will of the majority of American voters? and it's not a coup when you replace him with another dumbass Republican, okay? Republican of his choosing that will probably pardon him. So it's not really a coup, all right? If we replace Donald Trump with Hillary Clinton, then maybe you can start calling it a coup, okay? I'll join with you. There's a coup. I like the coup, but hey, that's a coup. We'll brand it and we'll sell it. But see, I rambled again. What was your question there?
I don't remember. You act like I write these things down. I don't know. But let me. Well, what this? No.
Looking at your desk.
Well, but let me follow up on something you just said. I've found it interesting that you're right. It would not be a coup if Trump goes out because another Republican would replace him, and in this case, that would be
the same administration.
It would be right. It'd be Mike Pence. It would still be Republican, and Republicans are fighting so hard to keep this particular gentleman in the office. I wonder if it's because they don't have the confidence in Pence, or they're being, I know there's some people who believe maybe there's blackmail going on, or there's so much money being funneled to people who are supporting him so crazy. But I keep thinking, he hasn't really performed very well in a lot of ways, anyways. But you'd still have a Republican president if you agreed that he had broken the law, as the evidence seems to suggest, and then you still have another Republican. And now it's still early enough to get Pence set up for a presidential run. I've found that very curious.
I think for me, part of it is the money, and I don't think it's like blackmail money. I think it's just it's the campaign money that Trump is driving to them. But none of them wants to be a Mark Sanford, the South Carolina congressman who was tossed out in a primary. He was primaried by Trump, and they successfully got him out. Trump isn't really that powerful anymore because every time he campaigns with somebody, it seems that they lose. But they don't want the wrath of Trump's voters. I don't even think it's him so much. Not every single one is a Matt Gaetz, the Florida. Is he your congressman? But the Florida congressman who was screaming about the Georgia governor appointing someone to the Senate who wasn't Trump's pick, is like, how dare you know better than Donald Trump? Which is basically in his tweet. That guy is a true sycophant. I don't even think it's about the voters' support. I really think that he burrowed up Trump's ass. And you have Republicans like that. And I think maybe Mark Jordan's that way. I think someone like Lindsey Graham, it's like, let me read the tea leaves, and oh no, South Carolina is really a stupid-ass Trump state, so let me go crazy here. The guy that once called him a racist is now defending him from racism, and so does Soul for Donald Trump, who knew he even had one. But I think it starts with being afraid of Trump voters and those people. I've met those people. They're scary, and they do vote. So I think that's it.
Has there been a slow day on the Trump cartoon beat since he took office?
There's not, and that's something else I talk to people about. Every cartoonist can tell you, and we talk about this at conventions, like we talk about the days where we don't even have a subject, and then we think, oh, what's going on? Oh, let me think, do I have to do a litter cartoon today or a weather cartoon? There's just nothing to do. And we still have writer's block. We still have days where we have an issue, but we just can't think of a great idea. And that's almost every day. But since Trump announced his campaign for the presidency, there's not been one day where I didn't have a subject. Usually most days I have multiple subjects. This morning I woke up and I had 4 subjects. I had them all written down. And I was like, which one do I want to do? I didn't have an idea for any of them, but I had 4 subjects. There has not been a slow day. There's not. I think a slow day is when something new is announced at 5 p.m., or there's only like one outrage per day. We didn't even get out of NATO when we were screaming or laughing about Emmanuel Macron dissing Trump, and then by the next morning we were talking about world leaders laughing at him. So even when he goes to these summits, it's like I had to sit back before I did a Macron cartoon because I thought something else was going to happen before he leaves London. Something else. So let me hold off on the Macron cartoon because the days are too busy since Donald Trump has come along. There are days, and I talked to other cartoonists about this, like, please don't say, I got a great idea on this. Please don't say anything else stupid before 5 or 7. And I do cartoons with CNN now, and we always start on Thursday, and we used to pick them on Thursday, and then I'd either draw it that night or Friday morning. And now we've gotten to the point where, okay, let's select it on Friday, and we're going later and later. It's almost like 4 or 5 p.m. now that when we're deciding what cartoon or what subject we're really going to do for the day, because it just news keeps moving so fast. It's like we can't decide on a subject that's going to run on Sunday, 3 days before Sunday, because we don't want to be outdated, because it just moves so fast. So, see, once again, quick question: was it a slow news day? I guess I could have said no.
Well, so those of us who follow you on Instagram and Twitter and things like that, I'm probably not alone in thinking that you put out more than one cartoon a day, because we seem to see so much content from you. Is that
It's all an illusion.
It is.
There are days where I do 2. Very, very rarely I might do 3. And a lot of times I think when I do 2 cartoons a day, that second cartoon might kind of bury the first one, because it's like the new one gets all the love. So I'd rather just do 1 a day. But sometimes I like being my cartoons are dated by dates. That's their file names. And like with Go Comics, I'm usually at least 2 or 3 days ahead. I got to the point where one time I was almost 10 days ahead, and I thought I got to slow down. Too far ahead. People reading Go Comics are thinking I'm just reading really, really old newspapers. But right now I'm probably like 2 days ahead, and there are days where I do kick out more than one cartoon because of stuff going on. I don't think I've done that in maybe 2 weeks, though. I think I've been pretty good about just 1 a day. I even took a day off last week. So,
how does it work with CNN? Does the material you produce for them, is that exclusive to CNN Opinion?
It is. The cartoon that they settle on, the cartoons I throw at them with all the roughs and everything, if they don't use it, I can do what I want with it, even though we never talked about it and they see me doing it. So, and I've told them, hey, if you don't select this one, I'm going to do it for my newspaper clients. And they never give me any gruff about it. And I don't think they can or they would. We do have a contract. I should probably read it sometime. But
what do you want to read the contract for?
I know. And it's actually a very short contract. It's just it gives them rights for the cartoon, and I can ask them permission for where else it can run. And when I first started with them, I asked permission to put it on my website because I didn't want to start with pissing them off. And I got that permission, and then they gave permission for the book. So they're not that weird about it. And my clients, if they want one of the CNN cartoons, they can't ask me. They don't know this yet, but they need to ask CNN. One of them knows because one of them asked. And they need to ask CNN, and I get like a form to send them or the contact information, which I've lost because I don't think any of them are going to do it because it's not easy. I mean, you don't just ask me for it. They have to go to someone else, and then they're probably going to sit down and think about it for a day. So I don't think it's going to happen. But they have to ask CNN if they want to use a cartoon. So it's all for them. And I don't put them on Go Comics or to any of my clients. I did, but other websites are out there, like the ones that are not legitimate, like Democratic Underground. They steal the cartoons and they put them on their website, and they've stolen CNN's. And I was really glad that the last time that they did it was CNN cartoon because I wanted CNN to go after them. So I told CNN, hey, look, stealing your material. So I don't know what's happened with that yet, but hopefully I find out.
Well, we should probably start winding down, but I want to ask you, one of the celebrities who endorsed Tales from the Trumpster Fire was a former talk show host named Rosie O'Donnell. And I could have sworn that she was a big Trump fan. I mean, and he a big Rosie fan. They always talking about each other.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So did I misunderstand that? Do they not like each other?
I don't know right now if you're being sarcastic, but I think you are. Yeah, you are, yeah. But they have a long history, and she was the first celebrity that I asked to give me a blurb for the book. I asked about 200 others, and she was the only one that really responded. And she responded within like minutes. And she didn't respond like, yes, let me think about it. She responded with the actual quote. So it's like, oh, cool, great. And I hope she's received her copy of the book by now. But yeah, she was. And she's the one everyone asked me, like, how did you get her? And honestly, it's like, I just asked. You know? But she had tweeted at me before in the past, so I thought she might be open to actually reading a request for me. So that's where that went. And most of the other people I asked had never heard from me before, didn't know me from you or Adam. They probably know you better than me. But I didn't hear back from any of those except for Deborah Messing. and I don't know if I should have said her name, and I don't know if it was her. It might have just been her people. But journalists responded, most of them, and the ones that couldn't get involved, most of them for contract reasons. I don't want to name any of them, but because they're all good people, and I wasn't mad at any of them because I totally understand. And they probably get a lot of requests. But Rosie was very easy, and it was very generous and gracious of her. And I'm really glad that I got someone who has a history with Donald Trump to give a quote for a book about Donald Trump. So that really helped out.
Well,
So,
and then Matt did the introduction.
yes, Matt Davies of Newsday, he wrote the foreword, and he was very generous too. I knew that he would say yes, and he did, and he took his time with it. And I don't mean like he made us wait. I mean he really, really focused on it, and he took it very seriously. And he has a lovely wife, Lucy, who's probably smarter than all of us, and I know that she helped direct and edit and guide him through it. And he made some sort of allusion about that or a reference to that, but I know that she did. And she's wonderful. And so I'm glad that Matt did it, and I'm glad that Lucy was over her shoulder a little bit. And anybody else want to mention?
Yeah, I was going to. Yeah, well, two of my other favorite cartoonists also contributed endorsements to the book. Ann Telnays, whose work I think is fantastic, and Mike Peters.
And I love to death. I love her work. She is one of the sharpest cartoonists in the country today. And like I have a very short list of who I think are cartoonists doing great, just the best work that's been done in the history of American cartooning. And Ann is in that list. She's at the top of it. And having her involved was just really, really cool. And I figured that she would say yes, and she did. And she was also like, I don't know, you're the one who writes stuff. I don't know if I can write anything like that, but I will. And she did, and she did a great one. And she suggested that I ask Mike Peters, and I thought that would be perfect because he's one of my influences, and he's one of my influences because he draws cartoons that are like crazy, that are insane. Mm-hmm. And I thought he would be perfect for this. Only thing is Mike takes like 2 weeks to reply to anything that you send him. And he replied right at deadline and right where he needed to go. And just like a typical cartoonist, I had to edit his. There was like typos and stuff. Yeah. Sorry, Mike Peters, but he probably doesn't care that I say that. I know a lot of cartoonists who are like that, and I'd probably be like that too. If I send something, but it was very Mike Peters what he did. So
well, it was a great treat to have Ann, and then to get Mike at the last minute, who I think most people would know, maybe even from not so much from even his editorial comics, so much as his daily comic.
Mother Goose and Groom.
Yeah,
it's a great strip.
Yeah,
he's a good guy too. I've never even met him. I was at the same convention as him once, and so many people were talking to him that I didn't feel like doing the fanboy thing to him, so I didn't bother him at all. And I talked to him after that, here and there, just online, and he's a really, really nice guy. He's always been super cool to me. And so then I thought I'd ask him about the quote, and I didn't think he'd say no. I thought maybe he just wouldn't reply at all, or he'd reply like 8 months later. I know some other cartoonists are kind of like that. I might be like that. Somebody might be watching this right now. Hey, I sent you a message last year. You never replied to it. Yeah, I do that sometimes. But I usually replied to other cartoonists. But yeah, it was really cool having those two involved. Actually, everybody who helped with the book, Matt Davies, Ann Telnays, Mike Peters, Rosie O'Donnell, I really appreciate everything that they did. I also appreciate all the stuff that you did for it too, Bob. So thank you.
I mean, there was no one more important to this book than me, of course. So
of course,
no, actually, that's not true. The young lady who you share your home with, I think, was pretty important to us.
I was about to mention her. I'm glad that you did. But yeah, actually, we would still be waiting on the book right now if she was not involved. She knew all the programming. Like I had my friend Herman Abinet, give him a shout out. He did the filing for the covers and stuff, and he got me started on the program that we used to lay out the book. But I didn't have Herman with me every day, and I actually just sat down with him once at a Starbucks. But with Amanda, it was like, okay, when you get home from work today, I need you to help me with this, or I'd yell across the room, hey, I need you again. And that was almost a daily thing. And guess what? I did something else. How did I do this? Help me do that. And I understand the whole thing a lot better now because of her. But there's a lot of it I still don't understand that I just had her do. And I felt bad at sitting in a corner watching her go through the entire book to do something like numbering the pages or formatting to make everything fit. Having her do all that while I'm just sitting in the corner where I just couldn't do anything because I'd be in her way, and I felt really, really, really bad, and she did it all for free. And big shout out to Amanda because we couldn't have done it without her. So.
I would say Amanda and Herman were definitely the MVPs on getting this book to press.
Definitely. Herman did the last shot.
Yeah. So. All right. Well, folks, listen, you can order Clay Jones' new book, Tales from the Trumpster Fire, a cartoon anthology. It's available in paperback. There it is. In case you didn't get the name, it's available in paperback or ebook. This is something new. Up until recently, you couldn't get ebooks that were this graphic heavy, but you can get this book for your Kindle. You can get it in iBooks. You can get it for the Nook and several other formats. So anywhere that you can order an ebook, certainly, and paperback, mostly from Amazon. Knock yourself out. Don't forget, really important, don't forget to call your local newspaper editor and say you want to see Clay Jones' work in your local paper. It's funny. Here's the thing. Even if you support the president, chances are, and you don't have to admit it to anyone, you're going to find this stuff funny because it's just funny. It's very on target, and Clay has a really good sense of humor. And so your website is claytoons.com, right?
That's right.
All right. And tell people what they can find there that's still kind of unusual, I think, for cartoons. You do a video blog of the creation of these tunes.
That reminds me, I got to do 2 days. Yes. What I do, which is different than other cartoonists, and I think a couple cartoonists might write columns with their cartoons. And I write one every day. It started off as just I'm going to do it occasionally, but then people would yell at me when I didn't do it. So now it's a daily thing, and I think it helps with the traffic for the website. And then I got the idea probably shortly before we did, maybe 2 years ago now, to start doing a video of the things, which is something I had to learn. And actually, I thought if I could learn that program, because I'm like a monkey, I can't learn things, and or slow monkey. Then I can learn how to do the book, but then again, I need a lot more help with that than I did with the YouTube program. But yeah, there is a video every day. I time lapse it, and you can go watch me draw every cartoon that I've done. My last 710 cartoons. That's what you can see, and for every cartoon, I do that. Wow. Yeah, there's a video, and I'm trying to make them as short as possible. At first, I started off kind of long, and then I figured let's cut this out, cut that out. So you don't see the entire cartoon. I take out some of the cross-hatching and the roughing and the lettering. I used to include all of that, but then we had 20-minute videos.
That wraps up this week's edition of E&P Reports, the official podcast of Editor and Publisher Magazine. Find us on the web at editorandpublisher.com, where you can subscribe to our daily newsletter. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Please share it with a friend or all of your social media contacts, and subscribe to us in YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you watch or listen to your favorite podcasts. And if you'd like to rate and review the show, well, we'd sure appreciate that too. And I should point out that we're going to take a couple weeks off for the holidays, and we'll be back the first or second week of January. I am your not-so-foul-mouthed host, Bob Andelman, saying thanks for watching, thanks for listening. And please consider checking out my other podcast, Mr. Media Interviews, now in its 13th year, at mrmedia.com. That's mrmedia.com. Let's talk, edit, and publish again next time. Happy New Year, everybody.
This is E&P Audio, a service of Editor and Publisher Magazine. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing.